Good afternoon, everyone. We are having a very different kind of press conference for a very important reason. I have here today, virtually, the family of Cab Calloway. We have Peter Brooks, his grandson. We have Cecilia and Camay, two of his daughters. We have George Coverdale, his nephew. We have Mark Letzer, the president and CEO of the Maryland Historical Society. We have Marti Pitrelli and Doc Cheatham, the former head of the NAACP. We're here to talk about some recent actions that the city has taken with respect to this important home behind us. And I'm going to start simply by saying this. I don't understand. I genuinely do not understand why, given all that is going on in Baltimore, in the state, across the country, and around the world, why earlier this week the city reversed its decision to suspend the demolition of this historic home and not hold a public hearing. It was literally last week that we were out here, just moments before the shelter-in-place order was to come into effect, when we learned that the city had wisely pressed the pause button and pledged to have a public hearing. That public hearing was going to give the community an opportunity to evaluate options on what could be done with the home at 2216 Druid Hill Avenue, which is where historians believe that Cab Calloway lived from the age of 8 to 17. The family was promised it a week ago. The politicians stood silent. We came out here and with the family said that our history is one of the few things we can always have. That to preserve that history is how we lay the foundation for our future. And that too often, too many times in the history of this city, we have, in the name of development and progress, literally and figuratively torn down our history. In the past 6 months, we learned that this was a place that could be an anchor for the Black Arts District. It could be part of a new vision for this neighborhood. A new generation, the next generation of artists, of musicians, could find inspiration on the same steps, the same streets that Cab Calloway and so many came after him found inspiration. That was an easy call for someone who knows and appreciates and understands the importance of this city's history to the present generation and the future generation of people here in Baltimore. I didn't understand why I was the only one. Of course, I'm not the only one. There are historians, there are people that believe in the rights and history of African American society here in Baltimore. And there is, of course, the family of Cab Calloway, who understands perhaps better than anyone why it is important to preserve this history. I'm going to make a very simple demand. I am asking city politicians to put politics aside, to stop being in the pocket of developers, and to stop tearing down history in the name of development. We need to assess the historical importance of this entire block. And let's stop playing games. If you demolish all the buildings to the left and right of 2216 Druid Hill Avenue, nobody is foolish enough to think we don't know what you're trying to do to 2216 Druid Hill Avenue. Stop pretending to give us a choice, to give us a public hearing, and then take away that choice and take away the opportunity for a public hearing. If this building collapses because you did not do the engineering surveys needed, that is on you. That is a predictable result of rushing to do this in the middle of a global pandemic. If the structural integrity and the historical importance of this is compromised because you tear down the buildings to the left and the right, that is on you because you rushed to demolish this block when you didn't have to. A week ago, you pledged a public hearing. We have it in writing. Why are we rushing to do this? Except because you're hoping under the fog and cover of a crisis that is taking the attention of so many away, that you can tear this down when people aren't paying attention. Well, people are paying attention. They are watching and they are judging what you do in moments like this. And if you think you can tear down a part of this city's history, a part of this family's legacy, a part of the history not just of Baltimore, of Black Baltimore, but of America, shame on you. We're not as dumb as you think. The people of Baltimore will find it offensive if you say one thing one week and change your mind pretending no one is paying attention, pretending we're dumb enough to fall for this. We're sick of it. I am a candidate for mayor. I know and believe in the future of this city, but I know the future of this city depends on us understanding, appreciating, honoring, and celebrating the history of this city. Part of that history and part of the legacy of this city is the Calloway family. And I don't know that there's anybody who can be a better ambassador for the legacy of their father and grandfather than Peter Brooks and Cecilia and Camay. With that, I'm going to ask Peter to speak. I'm going to let him zoom in on you. I'm going to have you speak.
Okay. I am going to yield my time to my mom, Camay. Are you on the call? Can you hear?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
I don't know whether you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, go ahead, Mom.
Oh, well, you know, it is a sad day in Baltimore, as has been said, but we've had many sad days in Baltimore, because I just feel that Baltimore does not recognize the richness that it has in the many major stars who have come out of the city in those early days when it was really, really difficult, extremely difficult to be a star. And especially if you were an African American and had a special talent and were trying to be a star. As the coronavirus has kept everyone inside, I've looked at a lot of programs of European cities, and most of the cities in Europe have recognized their artists, their people who have contributed to the culture and beauty of the city, and they have kept practically everything. Old crumbling buildings, they've collected just, you know, tombstones, whatever, to recognize those people who have made extraordinary contributions to the culture. And this is what Cab Calloway has done. He made an extraordinary contribution to the American culture. And I think that every aspect of his life should be honored.
Wow. It was beautifully, beautifully put.
My Aunt Lael, can she hear me? Can she hear?
Can you hear
Cecilia?
us? I'm going to put your
You're
volume
on.
Go ahead, Cecilia.
Yeah, okay. I am Cecilia Calloway, one of the many beautiful daughters of Cab Calloway. And for the past 20 years, I've been operating the Calloway Family Legacy Historic Preservation Project venture. And I'm inviting the preservation of the Calloway home in Baltimore to join us. The main problem is separation. And this is what our children need to know their history. Our children need to have something that is authentic. We are dealing with the pandemic now, which is working on separating to demolish our history. that our ancestors did do and what they came through is a travesty. And my dad and my aunt and my sister and so many people of that whole era, that whole time. We need to pass this on to our children. And I don't understand why in the middle of a pandemic we are going to go ahead and demolish a historical building when there are people, children, whomever, who need help, that need food. I mean, I just don't understand that. And I feel that we need to come together and keep moving forward.
Thank you, Miss Cecilia. Thank you, Miss Camay. Peter?
Uncle George? Uncle George?
George, Mr. Coverdale?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be able to make a comment on what is happening today on Druid Hill Avenue. I am the nephew of Cad Calloway. Spent many years traveling with him and living with him.
Yes, sir.
Lael is my cousin. Camay is my cousin. It brings tears to my eyes, people, to realize and try to understand why Baltimore City would want to demolish an historical building of which made popularity at its greatest. Cab Calloway gave his all for many, many years. Never forgot Baltimore, never forgot New York City, and traveled around the world 2 or 3 different times. I was blessed enough to be able to travel with him. I applaud the now running for mayor young fellow that's helping us out. Doc Cheatham, it's a pleasure to you to be included. Camay, it's a pleasure for you to be included. Lael, it's a pleasure for you to be included. The family knows my bond with myself and my uncle. I wrote a book about him. Okay, I am honored to be among the legacy and to upkeep the legacy of Cab Calloway's name. I will do anything within my power. However, we must have the senators and the council persons at Baltimore to understand that we will be willing to meet with you at a meeting to preserve this building. Me having an extensive background in construction and history of just being a contractor, know the difficulties that are involved in this. However, they can be overtaken and done in a way that will benefit everybody. The children, including the Cab Calloway School of Music and Arts in Delaware, is available. I am available. The whole family is available to testify, to let the city council know how important it is to maintain Druid Hill Avenue, to let everybody know where Cab Calloway started with his sister Blanche Calloway until he was 18 years old. What transpired after that is a legacy of history that no one has been able to match. It'd be a sad day to lose this. And I reserve my other comments for a later date. Thank you very much for including me, and I appreciate everyone understanding that Cab Calloway was the greatest.
Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And I don't know when we will see another one like him. I first have to thank Mark. Mark's been here with me since like 11 o'clock trying to get the text straight. Thank you so much, and the Maryland Historical Society. I also want to thank all of the reporters and all of the assignment editors and every journalist who has taken this story up to try to present it. It's extremely important, I think, for our future as it is important for our past. I also have to thank everyone who's contributed to this thing. especially Thiru Vignarajah. You know, I don't know how important character is when deciding on a person to be a leader, but if you want somebody who will come to your side when the chips are down, when everything is against you, and take up your cause and fight with you shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, in my experience, personally, Thiru Vignarajah is the man to do that. He is the only one who has done that. He's the only one who has stepped forward. And you cannot say I haven't reached out, because we've done the best we could as far as this is concerned. You know, our
That is
big
second by
argument,
me.
yeah, I mean, seriously, man, it takes a lot of courage, you know, and we really appreciate it, Thiru. We really appreciate it, because you have to have, you know, the vision to understand how history and the value of history plays into the preservation and the evolution of a culture and a civilization. I mean, I just don't know what happens to people who lose their history. And yet, when you see people who promote their history and their stories, they are successful. You know, just look at the successful people in society. They all know their history. I don't know, you know, what else to say. Our big argument for the city of Baltimore, and the reason why this is a travesty, is the fact that there is value in that house, and that we could not extract and take advantage of that resource is a real failing. And I just don't know what to say. I mean, it's like a runaway situation. And the final thing I just want to say, and just reiterate this to all of the people that are watching, is the fact that, you know, for thousands of years on this land, we abided by what was called the Iroquois Great Law of Peace. And the Great Law of Peace is a part of your natural inheritance as an American, as a Marylander, just like the Chesapeake Bay, just like the Allegheny Mountains. And the Great Law of Peace simply states that when a leader is to make a decision, they are not to think of themselves, their family, or even their generation. They are to think of the seventh generation. And that is what we are all trying to say here today, is that we need to leave something behind for our children to build off of. And so with that, I'll turn it to back to you, Thiru, or to Mark.
Mark,
May I say a couple things?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to echo two things that Peter Brooks and his Aunt Cecilia said is history. Without it, we have nothing.
Yes.
Okay, we have incredible layers of history that go back hundreds of years. Both all of us are in this together. This isn't about one race, one type. This is about everybody. And I also want to also echo Miss Cecilia. Why now? In the midst of this incredible pandemic, you're telling me you're going to go knock that down right now? I mean, that makes no sense. And why in the dark of night? This is an important structure, and it has precedent. You have the Lily Carroll Jackson Museum that is part of Morgan State University, and Lily Carroll, that has become, it was completely restored. It can be done the same way. The other thing I want to talk about, African-American children need heroes. And Calloway, U.B. Blake, they are heroes. And as the biggest keeper of history in the state of Maryland and running the institution of the Maryland Historical Society for all these years, I can say we have a great collection of U.B. Blake. We have his instruments, we have his sheet music, but we don't have his home. Edgar Allan Poe, there are homes for him. Lots of different cities claim Poe. We have one here, we have one in Richmond. So Calloway, this is the beating heart of music of the jazz era. Why wouldn't we want to preserve that? To take that neighborhood, to take a person that can become a hero to these people, to embrace that. It just, I don't understand that. This is an extraordinary opportunity. And I just want to leave it at that, that if we get rid of this, we're getting rid of yet another layer that we can no longer interpret in the same way.
Incredible eloquence. Thank you. Doc, you want to say anything? For those of you who can't see us, we're just calling up Doc Cheatham.
I can't sing, but I would be remiss if I didn't say, hidey, 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 hi, holdy, 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 ho. This is a sad day again in the city of Baltimore, where we are literally throwing away history in the name of quote-unquote development. This is not development. This is probably the most historic area in civil rights in America. This whole neighborhood here. Just about every civil rights leader you can think of came through this area. A few years ago, a few blocks down the street, the city of Baltimore did what they are doing now. They tore down the Freedom House. A church was involved in it. A councilman was involved in throwing away history. Every civil rights leader in America came to the Freedom House. 1, 2, 3, 4, Drew Hill Avenue. Now one of the greatest singers, one of the great activists in America. We are now going to tear down yet another piece of our history. What is Baltimore saying to us? Civil rights and African American history is of no importance? That a community development corporation has the right to tear our history away in the name of money? No, this must not and should not happen. For shame on you, Baltimore City, to tear away our history. Would you tear away our Jewish brothers and sisters' history? No, you wouldn't do that. Would you tear away our Greek history? No. Why are we continuing to allow us to tear away African American history that benefits all of us? I'm saying very strongly, this must not happen. Camp Calloway was an icon throughout the world, not just Baltimore. He blessed us to have him been here. Baltimore City, you're making a big mistake. I call names. Councilman, you're making a mistake. CDC, you're making a mistake. Let's not throw away our history. No one else is doing this, throwing away our history. I speak up strongly against this. At some point, our kids will have no idea of what this area is about. Clarence Mitchell Jr., Juanita Jackson Mitchell, Lily Mae Curl Jackson, all of them were in this neighborhood. Camp Calloway sang, and we are about to throw this away. We must not do this, Baltimore. Let's not do this in the shadow of a coronavirus. You're doing this when we're not looking, and yes, some of us are looking and saying, a shame on you, Baltimore City, for doing this. Thank you for having me.
I have to end by saying something, because what we are asking is so simple. We're asking for a public hearing so the community can hear both sides of this conversation, so they can be aware of the history and what is at risk and what is at stake, so they can hear alternatives that would allow both development to move forward, but also history to be preserved. And this is one of those things like history, where it goes in one direction. You bring these buildings down, you cannot build them up the way they once were. And to try to do this under the cover of night is so insulting. It is so offensive. I don't understand what our leaders are doing. I don't understand why I'm the only one standing up here with the family. I'm running for office, but this is not about me. And Peter and the family, I'm so grateful for what you are saying, but this is about the history of Baltimore. This is about preserving a piece of the magic that makes us who we are. The inheritance that we receive that we want to pass on to our children and the next generation and the generation after that. You have an opportunity to simply stop and reflect for a moment whether money is more important here. I have no idea whether this is politically popular or not. I don't care. Every once in a while, we just have to do the right thing and not worry about anything else. And here, the right thing is actually very simple. We're asking you to honor the promise you made last week, to hold a public hearing, allow the community to hear alternatives, and to then make a decision about how best to move forward. And to do it when everybody is not distracted by trying to keep their loved ones safe. The people that are on this screen are not here because they don't care. They would be here shoulder to shoulder with me if they could. They're worried about their loved ones. They're worried about their own health. And to do this now, it's insulting, it's offensive, it's reckless, it's irresponsible, it's not right. And we will judge you, the citizens of Baltimore will judge you, and history will judge you. Shame on you for trying to do this when we ought to be focusing on other things. And may God and wisdom grant you the insight to realize that just a moment of reflection to have a public hearing as you promised and pledged last week is the simplest and easiest and most righteous thing to do. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you again to the reporters that are paying attention at home as well as here in person. And may all of you stay safe and healthy in the meantime. Thank you everyone.